Hi guys, this is Chris with CodeChris.com. Thank you for watching, liking, subscribing, all that fun stuff. So, let me just run through some things I think are good about when you apply for interviews. So the reason why I bring this up is yesterday I actually had an interview. And at the time that this video was released, I'll know whether or not I got the job. But regardless, this is also in line with a project I did for them, and which I was not feeling super confident about because for me, I thought the code was a little overkill and there was a lot of stuff along the way. But here's what I ended up doing, and this is what actually got me the interview. So, what they actually recommended to me over the phone was they sent me a mock up for a website, and I think I actually. Okay, cool. So, where are you? I don't know. Cool. So they sent me a mock-up for a website, and this was the mock-up. And my job was just to take these mock-ups and go ahead and build a website. And what ended up happening is I built it. Now there was some criteria in regards to what the website needed to do, but one of the things that was recommended was to avoid Bootstrap. And because some candidates have had that. So, and I realized that what ends up happening very oftentimes, especially in the beginning, is you end up relying on these frameworks. You end up relying on Bootstrap or Skeleton or whatever, and you don't actually know how CSS works under the hood. You know how the grid system and these frameworks work, but you don't really quite know how CSS works. So what ends up happening is it's kind of difficult for them. This is me assuming it's kind of difficult for them to evaluate what your skill set level is because there's some really cool things that can be done with it, and it can do a lot of stuff for you very quick, very fast. So with that recommendation, I was like, okay, cool, yeah. Well, anyways, I'm looking at it like I can build this, make it responsive, all that fun stuff, and I had some really cool, crazy ideas, and I have another video where I explain to just keep it simple. But one thing I want to talk about was the actual interview. So yesterday was the interview. I found out from the interview one of the things that impressed them was the fact that I did not use anything, which made me happy. There's also a bunch of technical interview questions on top of that once I was actually in there, and these additional technical questions were a little bit tricky, and there was a lot of them. But luckily there were discussion questions, which was great, so I was able to go through my thought process and explain some things, and that really overall I think was a very positive thing. I also think I impressed them because I was self-taught. They definitely got that point across, that I was self-taught, and they brought it up a couple times. And at one point there was even a mention of like, well, let's go ahead and we want to see some of your JavaScript knowledge. Being self-taught, there might be some gaps in there, and I definitely answered those questions solidly, and they were overall, I think, pretty impressed with that. So that's good. So overall, I felt really good about the interview. The place itself is beautiful. It's amazing. I really hope I get the job, but if I don't, here's what's important, okay? And this is what's important for you too if you're doing an interview. So obviously you're going to be excited and all this stuff. You will have multiple interviews. You might have multiple interviews, and you will not get necessarily an offer all the time. It kind of sounds like I'm doing a buzzkill, right? But the reality is that it's a competitive field. Especially depending on the position you're looking for and how many candidates they have to hire, how many they have to choose, how many positions are open. And don't feel offended if you don't get the position. Instead, use it as an opportunity, okay? So for example, every time you do an interview, you're most likely going to be asked specific questions, technical questions, right? And this is good for any follow-up interviews because usually these technical questions are a little more advanced, they're a little bit more involved, there's something you don't even think about. And with that being said, at the next interview, if those same questions are asked, you are ready to go, right? You are 100% ready to go, and you can even bring up those questions or those answers. Sometimes it's the same question, sometimes it's not. But you can research it and realize, okay, I didn't know that answer. Why didn't I know that answer? What I've done is actually, at least for the online ones that I've had, I've actually screenshotted and recorded the questions. This is for more of the algorithm-driven questions, but I recorded these questions so that I would know and look them up, right? Because at the time I was on a timer, which was super annoying. I'm not a big fan of these whole timer tests, but with the timer, because if I got it wrong, I want to know why I got it wrong and what is the right answer. And now that new answer is in my brain. It's permanent, right? You don't forget when you got something wrong. You don't forget. And sometimes you learn something along the way, right? I learned about the freeze and unmutable objects on JavaScript because of a test question. And I started looking that up. I was like, wait, what's going on? And then it made more sense to me. Okay? So what I'm saying is, if you don't get it, take out of it what you can, right? Also, you can go ahead and see things. Well, how did I present myself? How did I speak, right? It's funny because in a lot of these videos, I do a lot of ums and ahs. I'm really trying to get better at that. During an interview, I'm much better and calm and collected. And what I do is I slow down quite drastically, think about what I'm saying, and with anything that would normally be an or an ah, what I do is I pause and think about, maybe even stutter, but I do not say any ums or ahs. I don't know, for me, sometimes inside my brain, I can just realize that this is more of an important business setting, and ums and ahs are not as crucial and accepted because you're trying to set a precedence. So it's something that I should actually be doing more of during these videos, and you'll probably see I'm going to try a lot more. Because it is very difficult to control how you speak when you're just trying to speak naturally. But during an interview, you kind of want to do above and beyond, and that's something that I'm able to do. So if you notice me starting to pause, that's why I'm trying to talk more professionally during these videos. Because watching them sometimes, I hear the ums and the ahs, and I'm just like, why? Anyways, back to the interview. So there's all of that, and the other thing too with the interview is you do want to ask questions. Not just because everybody's like, oh, you should always ask questions during an interview, but more along the lines of, if you do get this job, if you do work at this place, there are some things you should want to know. Do you want to know what the culture is like? Do you want to know if they're using a Mac or a PC? Do you want to know what their scheduling is like? I mean, really, this is the opportunity to learn about the job, learn about your position, learn about your team, or any of that stuff. And those are questions you should want to ask. It isn't so much that you have these fully loaded questions of like, well, could you go through a typical day here at the office? Everybody has that question. It's dumb. It's boring. Nobody cares because they know it's a they know it's a fake question. But my friend gave me this really good suggestion of asking, what is it like during lunch? Because you can tell a lot about a company and its culture during lunchtime. Do people eat together? Do they go out together? Is there a local place where everybody kind of mingles, right? Gives you a sense for the atmosphere. Is everybody kind of alone in their own kind of cubicle doing their own thing? Is it a very open space, very collaborative? Does it get loud? All those are kinds of things that, are important to where you work. And obviously, there's all the other stuff in regards to the company culture and how they treat their employees. And from what I've seen, they do a really good job of treating their employees and try to make them happy because they want to keep the employees, which is genius, right? Treat your employees well, and they will want to stay with you. It's quite genius. What else? So, anyways, with these interviews, and don't feel bad if you have to go to a couple places and you get rejected. My first job in web development, I had Well, first of all, multiple phone interviews. Of those phone interviews, a couple of them turned into face-to-face interviews. And from those face-to-face interviews, obviously, one offered me the job, which I took. And especially when it's your first job, it's more difficult, I think, to get that offer. What you'll tend to get a lot of is people being passed over for somebody with just any experience, some more experience, excuse me, some experience more than others. So what I did try to do was, once again, my first position was kind of downplay the fact that I hadn't worked anywhere and tried to show that I had worked code into my current position, that I'm self-taught, I'm motivated, I can learn anything, all that stuff, and also tried to show them like, hey, I have work, I have projects, I'm not just some guy who's learned. Like, here's some things you can look at, here's some things you can go through, and you can see that I actually do know how to build stuff, and I'm looking to grow and to learn. And that seemed to at least get me to a point where I was able to do some face-to-face interviews. And then they would ask me some questions, and what I would do is sometimes I did not know the answer, right? Like, I remember distinctively at the time, one of the questions I was asked was to explain the difference between hidden and uh, hidden, sorry, visibility hidden and display none. And at the time, I was still messing with CSS, and I was not quite sure. I was thinking about it, but didn't really quite know. And I always remember that one because that was from a job that I really wanted, and that was one of the questions that I know I didn't know the answer to, and I said I didn't know. And they're like, oh, that's fine if you don't know. But sometimes I wonder if they really said that, if it's just like, okay, he doesn't know. That's off the list. He's in the filter system. But now I know permanently, like for the rest of my life, that ingrained in there is that, hidden is going to keep the size of the div. It's just not going to show the object versus, or the actual div, versus doing display none actually removes it. Like, it's not showing it at all, meaning that the height doesn't exist, right? So one has height, and one removes that, so there's no space being taken up anymore. But at the time, I didn't know that. But now I know, and now I've learned from my mistakes. So all these questions, you'll start to like build a little library, and the more interviews you have, the better you get with them, the better you have at the questions, and you just kind of build this sort of arsenal of tools and questions. Not only that, but you also do realize that there are certain questions non-technical or specific, because those you really can't prepare for, because they're not always going to be repeats. But regardless, the thing is that you can't always. One thing you can do, sorry. One thing you can do is you can prepare for the non-technical questions. So the non-technical questions are things like, describe a time you had trouble with a coworker. Describe a time you had difficulty with a project. During this situation, what would you do? Can you tell us about yourself? Guarantee you the first question they ask you is, tell us about yourself. Because that's what happened to me on every single interview. And so at this point, I've gotten a little bit better at it. And usually what I do in the car ride over there is I kind of run through and practice just saying it out loud once, twice, a couple times, so that I am more comfortable with saying things like, well, hi, my name is Chris. I have experience in web development. The current company I work at is blah, 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 blah. And this is what we work on. This is what we do. And prior to that, actually, I was building on this. And outside of that, yada, yada, yada. What I've liked about your company so far that I've discovered is this, this, and this. And that's kind of like, in a nutshell, what I kind of run through. And it's important because I want to make sure that they know these are the things I'm familiar with. These are the things I've worked on. I want you to know that I'm motivated. I want you to know that I also build on these. I want you to know that I experience on those things. I want you to know that not only being motivated, but also self-taught. I try to get across that I'm self-taught. I want you to get across that I can learn anything, that I'm willing to learn, that I'm that kind of mind. I want you to know that I'm passionate about this stuff. I want you to know that I really enjoy it. So those are the things I try to get across relatively quickly. And I think overall that ends up doing a pretty solid job, and honestly, it kind of gives them some sort of precedence. Now, another fun tip or trick that, at least for this particular interview, worked, and once again, I will repeat the process because once you find something that did well for you, you repeat the process. What I did with them is, because the project was so complicated, I did send them a video explaining my process, why I did what I did, and how that all went about happening. What ended up happening is I ended up making a video and sending it to them with that whole process, which they apparently loved. They loved it because nobody has ever done it before. And what it really did is it sped up the interview. Well, actually, no. I actually had a longer interview than expected, much longer than they expected, which is good because I think that means you talk more and that there's more interest there. Short, not that much time. Short interviews have never gone well for me. Short interviews are usually a sign that you have nothing to offer, nothing to give, there's no interest, and you just, okay, we're just running through the motions, let's get you out of here. So for me, long interviews are usually an indication of positive feedback. Now, anyways, in regards to that, what they did is they saw my video, which eliminated a lot of the questions and guesswork they had about my knowledge, about my approach. It also shortened it, so they really only had like 2 questions about the test for me, which they said normally there's a whole portion in here we talk about, but you've covered it all. So what actually ends up happening is not only that they see my video, which I think kind of gives them a sense for my personality, how I talk, and all that stuff, but also what it did is I think it kind of set a precedence of, I was watching the video over, I was listening to it after I found out I got the interview, and I was talking about why I was compiling, the approach I took, why I took it, what I'm using at work, the difference between what I did here and what I do at work, and why I was trying to impress them with React, and how I changed things up, and blah, 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 blah. I was listening to it, and I tried to throw in a lot of technical jargon, but it wasn't technical jargon, it was accurate jargon. It was accurate jargon that was trying to be more clear and descriptive and informative about what was happening. And I was listening to it like, hey, that doesn't sound too bad. I actually sound like I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'd give that guy a chance. I'd at least interview him. Like, that's what I was thinking in my head. So, anyways, so that happened, and not only that, but because I have all these other videos, all these other YouTube videos, they apparently kind of browsed around and clicked some of the other videos. Now, I don't know which ones specifically. I'm hoping it's ones where, I don't know, I try to keep this channel very positive, and I try to say anything negative. So really any video is okay, but obviously some are more code heavy than others. Some are like motivational, and some are just kind of entrepreneurial and whatever. So I don't know if that would make a difference. Although I do have a technical one with me doing an array and an array. Knowing what I know now with VS6, I really should have done a for each instead of a loop within a loop. But I digress. I should really actually update that. Anyways, the point is, yeah, all this stuff happens and things get moving and all that stuff. And I think that pretty much covers it. So anyways, if you do an interview, should you make a video? Yeah. I have a video resume that I send people, which seems to have pretty okay so far. And I sent them a video. I mean, once again, you try to do something that's a little bit different. You try to do something that sticks out. Now the only thing is they know I have a YouTube channel. Which actually might be kind of cool, because then what I wouldn't mind doing is, actually recording, and then I can actually talk to some of the developers at work and do a little YouTube channel like session and stuff. Like, ooh, that'd be cool, right? And I've wanted to do that, but I need a big company to work at, and it's a bigger company, so that's good. So, anyways, it's Chris with CodeChris.com. Like I said, by the time this video is out, it'll be part of a sequence of series where I kind of talk about this particular one, or just until I get the actual job. But just hold off. Actually, it doesn't really matter at this point. You'd probably already know if I got the job or not. I don't know. I should know in a couple days, hopefully. Regardless, this video will be up afterwards. So, you know, and if I didn't, then I'm gonna wait until I do get the job, get a job, and then we'll go ahead and go from there. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Have a nice day. If you have any thoughts or questions about a video that I should be doing, that you're interested in, that you're just like, hey man, I got a question, leave a comment down below. Whatever it is, I'd be glad to chime in if possible. And hopefully it's a complicated enough or more involved topic that I can go ahead and talk about it. I think it doesn't really matter though, because clearly I don't have an issue with talking for far too long. Bye bye.